Hello, grade 9s. Today we're going to go through drawing Bohr models. Now you've already heard about Bohr models when we talked about the different atomic structures, the historical versions of the atom, but today we're going to learn how to draw them more specifically here. So we use Bohr models to represent the structure of the atom, and the Bohr models are going to tell us three things. Hold on a second here. Find my sheet. Okay, so the Bohr model is going to tell us three things. Now, first of all, this is a picture of the scientist Bohr, and his first name is actually Niels and then Bohr. That's his name, and that's what he looked like. So Niels Bohr here. So these three things you're going to have to draw, or write into your notes here. So number one. And remember, everything in red you have to write down in your notes here. So number one, what's in the nucleus? So protons and neutrons are in the nucleus. So that's going to tell us that from a Bohr model. And if we look here, I can see that right here, right? Now, the number of orbitals, which are the shells. So this particular example that I have shown you here shows you 1, 2, 3 shells in this particular atom. And then the third thing you're going to learn is the number of electrons from a Bohr model. So if you look at this Bohr model of magnesium, you could count the little red dots, and that would tell you how many electrons there are. So let's go ahead and do that. So we've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11, 12. So we'd have 12 electrons there. So these three pieces of information you can get from looking at a Bohr model. Now, electron shells. Electron shells hold a specific number of electrons. We actually already talked about the order before, but it might not have made much sense to you. In the first shell or the first orbital, those words can be used interchangeably. In the first shell, we can only hold 2 electrons, okay? The second shell can hold up to 8 electrons, and the third shell can also hold up to 8 electrons. So the pattern is going to be 2, 8, 8. Now the thing is, you fill up one shell before you move to the next. So we're going to go take you through an example on how to draw one, and that'll make more sense to you. So the example we're going to go through is to draw the Bohr model for an atom of carbon. So I've just brought, this is the information that you can find on any periodic table about carbon. So your very first step is going to be to determine the number of subatomic particles. And remember, sub meaning in, so the particles that are inside of the atom. And so we're going to be looking at protons, neutrons, and electrons. Now remember, the atomic number here is equal to the number of protons. So I'm going to put a 6 here. Now the electrons are always going to be equal to the protons, so you can right away put a 6 there. And that's because this is a neutral atom. If it had a charge, it would be a different story, but we're not going to talk about that yet. You'll talk a lot about that in your grade 10 science course. Today we're in grade 9, we're mostly focusing on when they're neutral. Now, neutrons, you have to determine by taking the mass, which is 12. So I'm going to take the mass here and I'm going to round it to a whole number, and then I'm going to subtract the number of protons, and that's going to give me the number of neutrons. So for carbon, these are all the same. I've got 3 6s here, so each of the particles I've got 6 of. So now my next step is going to be to draw the Bohr model. So I'm first going to draw the nucleus. So the nucleus is going to go in the middle, and I'm going to show the protons and neutrons. Now, I've got 6 protons and I've got 6 neutrons. So that is going to go inside of my nucleus here. Now I'm going to draw the orbitals. I'm going to fill in the electrons. So we're going to draw, and my circles tend not to be the greatest, my apologies, but I'm going to draw my first orbital. Now, I've already stated, if I look back here, that first shell only can hold 2 electrons, right? So I'm going to draw my first 2 electrons here. So 1, 2, and I'm going to spread them out on opposite sides there. Now, how many electrons total do I have? Let's go back and check. I've got 6 electrons total. Well, I've drawn 2, so how many left do I have to place? Yeah, I've got 4. So now I'm going to draw my next orbital. And so now I'm going to draw 4 electrons in there. Now, when you place these, electrons tend to pair up, but they fill around the circle first. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. And this is actually complete now. So I've got my nucleus showing my protons and my neutrons, and I've got my 6 electrons around the nucleus. In the first shell it has 2, and in the outer shell I've got 4, so showing 6 electrons total, okay? Now, we're going to work through this example, draw the Bohr model for lithium. So again, I'm going to find my protons, neutrons, and electrons. That's going to be my first step. So everybody can go and find lithium on their periodic table. For those of you, maybe if you don't have them in front of you, I'm just going to draw one here. Lithium, I don't think I put one in here. No. So lithium, it's going to have a 3 here and then 6.94. So looking at that, so for lithium, I know the number of protons is going to be equal to 3 because that's my atomic number. If I've got 3 protons, I've got 3 electrons. So my next step is to find the number of neutrons. And how I do that is I take the mass, which is 6.94, I'm going to round that to 7, and I'm going to subtract the number of protons, and that's going to be equal to the number of neutrons, which will be 4 here. And be sure if that's something you're struggling with, make sure you check with me about that, okay? Next, I'm going to draw my Bohr model. I'm going to draw my nucleus. I've got 3 positive here, and I've got 4 N here. Now, I have 3 electrons that I have to place. The first shell can only hold 2, so I'm going to go 2. Whoops. So I've placed 2. I've got 3 total, which means I only have to place 1 more electron here. So that's going to be 3 electrons there, and this is the Bohr model for lithium. Okay, next we're going to take a look at argon. So again, protons, neutrons, electrons. So if I go to the periodic table and find argon, I will find that argon is number 18 and that it has 39.9 as its mass here. Excuse me. So looking at the number of protons, that's going to be equal to the atomic number here, this 18. So I'm going to put 18, which means I've got 18 electrons. Neutrons I have to find by doing a little bit of math here. So I'm going to take my 39.9, rounds to 40, subtract 18. I've got 22 neutrons here. So 22 neutrons, 18 protons, 18 electrons. Okay, so nucleus. Inside the nucleus, I'm going to put my 18 protons, 22 neutrons. Sorry, it's a little hard to read there. Now, how many electrons do we have to place? I've got 18 to place. The first shell can only hold 2. So now I've got 16 left, right? I'm going to draw my next shell. And so this one can hold up to 8. Remember, 8 is the maximum for any shell. So I've got 2 electrons there. Now I'm going to place up to 8 here. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I'm going to start pairing them up. 5, 6, 7, 8. So now I've drawn 8 electrons on that second shell. I've drawn 10 electrons total, because 2 in the first shell plus 8 in the second. So now I'm at 10. So I'm going to draw my third and final shell, and this one I have to put the rest of the electrons. Now I've said I've already placed 10. I want to get to 18, so I've got 8 more electrons to place, which is good because this orbital will hold up to 8, so that's good. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And now I am done. That is the Bohr model for argon. Okay, as your assignment, assignment, I don't know where my pen went. Oh, there we go. You were given, I think it's blue, a sheet where you can draw the Bohr models for the first, I think it's 18 elements. So you'll get lots of practice. You might get sick of it by the end of it, but it's good to practice the whole thing. Okay, thanks everyone.